Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports Podcast, the college offseason podcast, where you could say we're less of the regular season, but more of the offseason. As you noticed, last week I was all decked out in Texas gear, but this week I'm decked out in all Duke gear, for two reasons. A, the basketball team actually looked like they could play semi to their potential yesterday, actually playing with a purpose on both sides of the ball. But also, we got a new football coach officially. Manny Diaz, one of the best defensive coordinators in all of college football, is now officially the new head coach at Duke, which is surprising only for the simple fact that I said on this podcast that Nina King would go with one of the coaches that we were least expecting, but Manny Diaz was one of the ones that we were expecting as the new head coach. So welcome to Durham, Manny Diaz. And of course, as Duke fans know, it's never official until you hold the baby in Cameron.
Okay.
Did you not see that?
No, I don't know about holding any babies, but
There's a doll like that goes around Duke basketball games. Cooper Flags held it, all that stuff. It's very synonymous with the Cameron Crazies.
that's not creepy at all.
It might be creepy, but it's validating. So
The baby is validating.
it
Okay.
is. Just you're not a Duke fan, you wouldn't understand.
I'm not a Duke fan and I do not understand, but I'm sure it's no different than wearing candy striped pants, but I'm not
Yeah,
I'm not going to get into that now.
you're right, because we have a lot of things to talk about here today because on this show we are going to be talking about yes, the transfer portal that has already seen 400 more entries from this point last year. But specifically, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks during this portal. And my first question to Matt is Matt, despite the fact that 5 out of the last 7 Heisman Trophy winners were transfer quarterbacks, is this the best transfer quarterback class that you can remember?
I can remember, yes, but I mean, the thing with all this stuff is that only time will tell. I mean, it's hard to believe there was a time where like we were unsure of like the proven quality of both Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, who are both tearing it up in the league today in spite of one being injured. It's weird to think about that. So on paper, I think this is the class that has the most established goods, whether it comes in the form of a Cam Ward or a Dylan Gabriel or somebody like that. I would I would say that. I would say that this class has the most established goods of any group that I can remember entering the transfer portal. But the thing is, Les, that's going to change next year because if there's anything we've learned, is that as this thing progresses and gets more and more impactful and more, I guess financially lucrative is the words I'm looking for, are the words I'm looking for that it's going to be even crazier next year. So this year, yes, but it's just part of the natural progression of things. You've got more people in. You've got people. You've got more coaching movement as people jockey for position in the new power conferences. You've got a lot of stuff, and this year it is, but it's part of a progression. And I think next year you'll ask me the same question, and I'll respond by saying, "Well, this year is actually the most proven group of quarterbacks in the portal that we've seen." But the portal, as we know it now, is still a new concept and it's still young. But this group so far has been the one that's intrigued me the most and I think has the most potential to really shake things up.
So, with that being said, given all the names of the quarterbacks that have entered the portal, was there any quarterback in particular that maybe surprised you with their entry?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a person who surprises you. And I thought for sure, it's by the fact I was like, when we were doing our fantasy GMs with college football, I said that I wanted Will Rogers to go there. McCord really did surprise me. But then again, you look at Ohio State, they have like 16 other guys enter the portal with him that day. And it's just like, okay, what's going on behind the scenes? Because, a wide receiver, a running back, a defensive tackle, they're going, they're big fish in a big pond. And, there's barracudas in it. They're just looking to go to be a big fish in a smaller pond like a Northwestern and IU and Iowa. But when Kyle McCord, a guy who was two not really his fault interceptions away from engineering a berth in the college football playoff. With the expanded football playoffs coming next year and Ohio State being the name, in spite of losing Marvin Harrison and Emeka Ibuka, we know that they're going to just reload. So just go ahead and say, like, no, I think I'd rather go to Nebraska was a really kind of big surprise for me because it's like I always had my doubts about that kid. I remember watching the first game of Ohio State's campaign against Indiana when they didn't exactly blow the top off Indiana, who was abysmal this year with Marvin Harrison, Ibuka, and God knows who else on offense. That was kind of like, okay, maybe he's not as good as I think, but he was still good enough to function as the main quarterback at Ohio State. And there was if he beat out Devin Brown once, he could probably do it again. And then seeing him in the portal was just kind of a surprise. It's like, why would you leave seemingly a place where you could just be a system quarterback, a plug and play place, where I know that people had doubts about you. I know people have doubts about Ryan Day, but to do that and then just go to the the former Big Ten West, and just kind of make it harder on yourself, that one really did surprise me.
And I think I can touch up a little bit on that because Ryan Day and Kyle McCord supposedly had a conversation, and McCord asked Ryan Day if they were going to pursue a quarterback in the transfer portal, and Ryan Day did say that they were. So I understand the fact that McCord maybe doesn't see a solidified starting job with Ohio State, so he does ultimately decide that it is time for him to leave. But my big thing with that is, though, kind of like to touch on what you said. Ohio State has, some of the best weapons you're going to have. You play for an offensive coach. So my thing is, if you're going to leave that and go to, another Power 5 school, what makes you think that you're going to perform better? Because it doesn't really get much better than what Ohio State is going to supply for you.
No.
And, McCord, you look at some of the past quarterbacks of the Ryan Day, and of course, I'm dating back to when he was the offensive coordinator for Urban Meyer. He's one of the more underachieving quarterbacks of that era. So if you can't make it work with that, why are you going to another Power 5 school and think you can make it work? If you're going to transfer, why not go to a Group of 5 school? That's where I think that move didn't make sense to me.
But what I do like is that now, and I mean, what do you expect Ryan Day to say in that situation? Like,
He could
right
lie to
now,
him. He
what?
could. He
He
could
could
lie to
lie to
him.
him. That's
A
even
lot of
worse.
coaches do that.
And that's almost even worse. I mean, you're putting him in a weird position of either having to lie, like you said, or just be like honest, which is, the transfer portal is popping off now more than ever. If Cam Ward comes, I'm not going to tell Cam Ward no.
Mm-hmm.
Or DJ Uyunglele. I'm not going to be like, no, you guys suck. I don't even want you around Columbus. You're going to like Chillicothe. You're gonna wait out there or something. What do you expect them to say?
Right. I mean, but again, like, I think this is a
I'm
point
not
that we've
saying you
talked
said
about
that.
on.
I'm saying, putting the coach in a weird position like that.
No, right. I get what you're saying, but I think from my perspective, you do hear a lot of coaches there. They tell their players that they're loyal to them, but then they go out and get a new player. And one thing I wanted to talk about is one thing we have talked about on this show is how much heat Deion Sanders gets for it. But for me, Deion Sanders, it gets a bad reputation from the media for saying what a lot of coaches are doing without saying it.
Yeah, he's just blunt about it. There's
Yeah,
no
he's just blunt. He's
coaching.
honest, and to, like kind of what you're saying. I'd rather a coach be like that. I mean, I'd rather know where I stand than it be like, hey, surprise, we said we were loyal to you, but in comes Cam Ward. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I
but
get that, and I agree with you. It's just a weird question to ask your coach, like, hey. But I mean, I respect Ryan Day for being honest. I will give him that. That's like we said with Dion. That's something you don't really see a whole lot of at this level. You get a lot of coach speak.
well, remember when we had Marcellus Dale and Davion McKnight on the show? I mean, Mark Marcellus said, I mean, this is a conversation that players have with their coaches regularly. Like they
Yeah,
always want to know like where they stand, where they fit in the potential, game plan for the future. So I mean, this is something that happens all the time. So
I'm just imagining like Kyle McCord slipping like one of those grade school notes under like Ryan Day's door. Do you like me?
do you like
Yes.
me? Yes,
No.
no, maybe.
Definitely. And
I
Ryan
love
Day
that
just picks
analogy.
off,
I love that. I love that
Ryan Day
analogy.
just picks off maybe and slides it back under the door, and he's like, "Oh, I better transfer.
Right.
I'm
So
getting
yeah,
out of here."
right. So McCord, I think, was surprising from that end. But do you know who the most surprising to me was?
I'm going to say Dylan Gabriel because you had to
Yes.
take about this.
Yeah, because Dylan Gabriel, I mean, he had one of the best seasons of his career statistically. He won 10 games at a big time football program, and they'll be heading to the SEC next year. So there's even more NIL opportunity, even more big game exposure opportunity. And yes, he did commit to Oregon, which I have no doubt he will do fine for the Ducks. I mean, he's going to come in and replace Bo Nix essentially. And we saw how Bo Nix was able to rejuvenate his career from Auburn to Oregon in that regard. But with Gabriel, he's not necessarily going to have to rejuvenate anything. He's already going to be more of an established product coming into Oregon. And there's no doubt he'll be fine. But during following like his transfer tracker, there were a couple ideas that I found very intriguing. And the one that really intrigued me the most was the potential idea of him going to USC. And like Oregon, more than likely USC will be looking for a new quarterback next year too. More than likely Caleb Williams will be leaving for the NFL draft, despite all the rumors of how much money he could potentially get with NIL, despite the rumors that if he only wants to play for this or that team and wants to own partial percentage of the franchise or whatever it is. But given that more than likely USC will be looking for a new quarterback next year, I mean, Lincoln Riley still has ties to OU. And what if he gets another quarterback from OU? And plus, offensively, Dillon Gabriel could be next level in that offense. He'd go from, I say this, and I don't know if you've seen this movie, but he could go from Dillon Gabriel to Gabriel from Malignant.
I have not seen that movie.
Go watch it. Gabriel from Malignant is a savage. But anyways, you look at like what Lincoln Riley's been able to do with quarterbacks in particular. He's coached 3 Heisman Trophy winners, and on top of that, all 3 of which were transfer quarterbacks at that. So I look at Dillon Gabriel potentially replacing Caleb Williams with USC, and I'm just thinking that would absolutely be deadly. The only question mark with that would be, would they able to put a defense behind him so that he doesn't have to score 50 points a game?
That's always a good question.
But I think this also brings the next question. Now, with Gabriel leaving Oklahoma, what's next for the Oklahoma quarterback situation, in your opinion?
Well, there's always the transfer portal.
Right.
Yeah, and let's kind of circle back on that. The thing that made me interested about the USC situation too is now they're really tightly linked with Will Howard from Kansas State. That's an interesting move to me as well. But as for Oklahoma, there are some really good quarterbacks in the transfer portal still. It's just how many of them are going to want to go and play in the SEC.
Right.
That's what you got to think about. I mean, DJ Uyunglele is there. You've got Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward's probably going to end up at Ohio State.
I think Ohio State or LSU. One of those two.
He was touring Florida State and Miami too. I don't think that's gonna, I don't think that's gonna happen. I'm just gonna be honest. You've got Dante Moore out there. You've got let's be honest about Riley.
Hold on, pause. Were you implying that DJ Uyunglele had committed somewhere? Or were
you
saying
no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember who's a free agent and who's not at this point. Because so many guys have come in and gone. A guy I'm fascinated by, and there's no reason really why he would go to Oklahoma other than it's a step up and it would be really fun, is the MAC Player of the Year, Daquan Finn from Toledo.
Mm.
I really like him. I think he's a really good player. I've watched a few MACtion games this year. There's no real reason why he would go to Oklahoma. There's nothing like, he knows the coach there or anything. But it would just be a good pickup, I think, for them. So I would like a Daquan Finn in there. There's a quarterback from New Hampshire. He's been pretty good in the FBS. I'd like to see him go there. So that's the good news for Oklahoma. That's that they have so many people that you don't need to worry about. There are so many quarterbacks out there. You don't need to worry about it that much. But what I was going to ask you, Les, is because you follow this more than me, is like, do they have someone coming in?
I'm going to get to that here in a second, but I want to make this point real quick, is that, Matt, you know what your aspiration should be? You should be like an agent for like mid-major football players to maybe make it to the next level.
I could try that.
I think you'd be really good at it. You'd put together like the perfect pitch for like, a group of 5-star player to like get scouted by a big time program to get an opportunity to potentially play in the 12-team college football playoff. But to ultimately answer your question, yes, I don't think Oklahoma is going to actually go with the quarterback in the portal because they have one of the more talented quarterback prospects already on the roster. It's a kid named Jackson Arnold. He was the most recent, not most recent, but he was last year's Elite 11 camp MVP. Many people believe that he was every bit as good as Arch Manning or Nico. I cannot pronounce his last name to save my life, so I just call him Pajamas. But Jackson Arnold is also he's one of the better quarterback prospects in recent years. And he really played well in last year's Oklahoma spring game. So I think Oklahoma is comfortable with Jackson Arnold. That is just my personal opinion. And I think Jackson Arnold could also have played a potential role in why Dillon Gabriel wanted to transfer, because I think OU and Bob Stoops, with going to the SEC, they might think this is the time for Jackson Arnold to step in and be the guy.
Take some lumps while he's young, yeah.
Absolutely, especially with their first year in the SEC. We don't know what their expectations are going to be, and at least get him started off on a competitive foot, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyways, Dillon Gabriel wraps up my most surprising, and we got to talk about the local teams, because both of them actually just received a quarterback from the transfer portal. You have Brock Vandagriff going to Kentucky, and you have Tyler Show going to Louisville as of right now. So, Matt, what were your thoughts on these moves?
Well, I was a little. I guess Louisville has a model now with Jeff Brom, which is slightly underwhelming guys who have played college football for like 5+ years. And I mean, it worked last year to an extent. I mean, this year to an extent. It'll be interesting to see how it works next year. But, a 7th-year senior, you're getting experience, but you're also probably not going to get a guy who's, going to grab your attention right away, just like Jack Plummer. I thought Jack Plummer was good. I never thought he was going to be anything super exceptional. And I kind of feel that same way with Show here. As for Vandergriff, like you said, you thought he was going to go to Oregon.
Well, that was a hypothetical. That was a hypothetical. I do want to clear that up. That was a hypothetical.
We were kind of rooting for that and have him go to Kentucky, who, by the way, picked up a wide receiver yesterday from Texas A&M in the portal, who I think had like all of 23 yards last year. But hey, we all know how Texas A&M struggled at times.
As long as it's not Evan Stewart. As long as it's not Evan Stewart.
It's not Evan Stewart. So, I mean, I think that just goes to show. And the funniest part about that was like he's following his ex-coach back to Kentucky, and I'm like, ha, I see what you did there. That's funny. But I'm excited to see what Vandergriff does. But I'm also going to be honest. I thought Devin Leary with Liam Cohen was going to go out there and just torch people, because I remember how much we loved him at NC State, and now it's like I'm a little bit wary. I know this guy's got more time to gel than he did, but I'm still kind of like a little bit wary, after Devin Leary didn't tear it up. But, it's a different quarterback. Maybe he fits the system better. And it's just weird thinking about next year's Louisville Kentucky game after all those years of, oh man, here comes Lamar Jackson. Oh man, 2 years of Will Levis. It's now it's still a great rivalry, but it's kind of like the names change every year. Or right. I think that's how it's going to be from now on. And it's weird to accept that, but I'm cautiously optimistic for both. But I'm still wary because a 7th-year senior, and the fact Devin Leary was a little bit underwhelming, kind of make me wonder what exactly is going to happen.
So I'm kind of in a similar opinion to you. Vandergriff was definitely a very talented quarterback prospect, but of course that only goes so far. We have very limited from what we've been able to see from him at the collegiate level. And I am one to say that I actually wasn't as high on Leary going to Kentucky. And a lot of that is because of what we saw from him his final year at NC State. He kind of showed that he was productive within a certain system. And if Liam Cohen could have replicated that system, maybe he could have been successful. But at the same time, he also is playing in the SEC versus playing in the ACC, which I know that's very ironic given what I said about the ACC in the last podcast. But as far as like the typical defenses that you see game in and game out, yeah, it is a different level of physicality. And that's more or less where I was going with that statement. But Tyler Show is a very interesting one for me because, of course, the big storyline is that he's reuniting with his high school teammate, Jawar Jordan. But my overall point about this, Matt, remind me, what is the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
So Tyler Show has yet to play a full season in college, and he's often been replaced by a younger, talented quarterback. I think this could be very potentially the same situation at Louisville. He could potentially be replaced by a Pierce Clarkson or a Deuce Adams. And there's also rumors that Louisville could still be pursuing another transfer quarterback. Another hot name in the rumor circle is DJ Uyangale. So I think if I'm Tyler Show, even though he does fit the trend of what we've seen from the Jeff Brom era up to this point, given his track record as a quarterback in college football, we have every reason to believe that the same trend could happen at Louisville. So I guess what my question was that is this dude insane?
Jeff
I
Brom?
think do what?
Jeff Brom, is he insane?
No, Tyler Show.
Oh, yes, I bet he is.
I would say I feel like because one of the other teams that was linked to him as a potential landing spot was UCF, and I feel like he would have had a better opportunity to be the full-time starter there. Because I mean, if you're going to transfer from school to school to school, try to find somewhere where you know you're going to play. And with Louisville, I mean, they have talented quarterbacks already on the roster, and there's rumors that they're still pursuing another one. So go somewhere where you actually know you're going to play. And I think UCF would have probably been the better option there.
I think UCF's problem is they probably have eyes for somebody from a little bit slightly to the north who's called Grayson McCall. But
Yes,
I think that's probably what kept him out of UCF because I'd rather have Grayson
unlikely.
McCall.
I would definitely rather have Grayson McCall than Tyler Show. Absolutely. But another name that really surprised me, and of course, I don't know how I missed this. I actually didn't even know that this guy entered the transfer portal until I just happened to be taking notes for the show. But that's Boise State quarterback Taylen Green. The thing about Green, though, is that he has opened up the possibility of returning to Boise State. But I'm really surprised because ever since Andy Avalos was fired and Spencer Danielson, which shout out to Boise State, it's not a Less is More sports podcast without shouting out Boise State. Spencer Danielson, since he took over as the interim head coach, not only were the Broncos 3-0, but Taylen Green was playing his best football of the year. And for me, it's like, why leave what seemingly was working, I guess?
And the other thing that surprises me too is, did you see where he's already taken a recruiting visit?
I've seen a couple. Where specifically are you talking
The
about?
one that intrigued me was a team we talked about last week because it's not me. It's not me on the Less is More Sports podcast unless I'm shouting out a scandal that happened years ago, which is Arkansas.
Yeah,
So, and we just talked about that. Who loves mobile quarterbacks? Bobby Petrino. Maybe KJ Jefferson and Raheem Sanders just want out. They just want out. They're not worried about a new offensive coordinator. They're just done with Sam Pittman. And that would be interesting to me because, like you said, Les, why would you go from the Mountain West to the SEC like that in a system that was actually doing pretty well for you? Other than
right.
one thing, which is NIL. And you know who has NIL money down there? You get that sweet Walmart money.
Absolutely. But also I saw two other options I think that are also very intriguing. The first being Washington State, because with Washington State, he's close in proximity to Boise State, and they're also going to be looking for a quarterback with Cam Ward entering the portal. But if Green joins the Cougars, they won't have to tweak the offense as much because he brings a lot of similarities that Ward had.
Yeah,
But the downside, obviously, is that Washington State is joining the Mountain West next year, so Green wouldn't get a better conference exposure. It'd literally be the same as staying at Boise State.
yes,
But another one that was also intriguing is Cal. Like Washington State, Cal's offense is also predicated around having a run pass option at quarterback, and Cal's offense really lacked that when Sam Jackson went down. And the key here is that there is some representation with Boise State with head coach Justin Wilcox and offensive coordinator Mike Blesh. Blesh, I think that's how you pronounce that. But who also they like but he also, like Taylen Green, they're both Texas guys because Taylen Green is a Texas native. Plus, with Cal, they'll be playing in the ACC next year, so there will be more television NIL exposure there. But the downside to that also being that current Cal quarterback Fernando Mendoza still knows the offense better, and Cal could be loyal to the quarterback that helped turn their season around and make a bowl game. So that's the pros and cons of those scenarios. But yeah, the Arkansas one, I'm with you. That's actually very intriguing because there will be more of an NIL opportunity there. Plus, we all know how Bobby Petrino loves his mobile quarterback. So Taylen Green, you put him with a team with more talented players. I mean, see what he could do.
Yep. And the other interesting thing to me, especially about this year's portal, which is if things kind of hold as they're holding, it may be like the best year I can remember for Big Ten quarterbacking. As
Hmm.
weird as that sounds. Like if Kyle McCord goes to Nebraska, if Tyler Van Dyke goes to Wisconsin, Max Brosmer is the kid from New Hampshire I was talking about, and he's going to Minnesota. If Cam Ward goes to Ohio State, you've still got Drew Aller at Penn State. He's probably not going to go anywhere. This could be the most intriguing year at quarterback in the Big Ten I think I can remember in a long time.
And you potentially left out two names as well. Aiden Childs from Oregon State could potentially be joining Michigan State, and Dante Moore is also a name linked to potentially joining Michigan State. Aiden, which is funny because with Aiden Childs, we said on the podcast that Jonathan Smith might be pursuing a quarterback that he coached at Oregon State, and having one of them follow him to Michigan State. Of course, lead speculation might have been that it was DJ Uyunglele, but Aiden Childs really looks like it could be the lead candidate to be the next quarterback at Michigan State.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then there are other guys too who haven't found a home yet, like Curtis Rourke, the quarterback from Ohio University. Not Ohio State, Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, which is a really beautiful place right along the Appalachian area in the state of Ohio, close to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, home of the Mothman. He's a really intriguing quarterback to me because I think he could definitely jump to the Big Ten and be pretty darn good. So I mean, I'm looking at the Big Ten quarterback scenarios for next year, and they're very intriguing. And then, like I said, you add in the out west teams. Looks like Will Rogers is going to Washington at this point. Oregon's got Dylan Gabriel. USC has Will Howard at the moment, probably, and will probably have somebody younger and more exciting too. So I mean, it's going to be interesting. This may be the best year in Big Ten quarterbacks in a long time, which is incredibly weird for a conference that's well, at least one of the divisions was predicated on just safeties, field goals, and then holding on to the football.
Right. We could actually see a more explosive Big Ten offense, which that would be a very exciting thing to watch.
They're going to
Of course,
score
that's what
20
they're gonna.
points.
That's what they would have to do if the college football landscape does indeed go to the model that you predicted it would go to. That's what the Big Ten would have to do to be able to compete more with the SEC for who is potentially the better conference. Is the quote unquote NFC of college football as good as the quote unquote AFC of college football?
Yep, that's what it would have to come down to. Is like you play the smash mouth, snow driven football of the North, or the hard hitting but more explosive offense of the South.
That would be quite the entertainment to watch. Matt, I'm actually going to take a page out of your playbook and shout out a mid-major guy that's also in the portal.
Oh, I like
So,
this.
but of course, it's because it's not a Less is More sports podcast without shouting out Boise State. And I'm going to talk about a former Boise State quarterback and Hank Bachmeier, who just seems like he's been in college forever. As many jokes as like Bo Nix or others get, or even the most recent Heisman Trophy winner, which shout out to Jaden Daniels, by the way. Hank Bachmeier, after getting benched for Tayleen Green with Boise State, decided to transfer to LA Tech, but now has officially found a new home at Wake Forest. So my question: could Hank Bachmeier potentially replicate a similar quarterback production that we saw from maybe a Sam Hartman?
I mean, sure. I mean, anything's possible, Les. With especially with the ACC being the way it is, God only knows how much longer it's going to be around. I mean, it's certainly possible. I mean, we've seen that the Wake Forest offense is like definitely adapted itself to be high scoring before. I don't understand why it couldn't be for somebody like that. But like you said, Les, he's been around forever, and that kind of like makes me wonder too. Everyone got the COVID year, but you leave Boise State, you go to Louisiana Tech where you're okay. It makes me wonder. I always kind of have a wonder when you get like an older guy who's been a couple places, how great the staying power is. But that's the interesting thing about college football. You just don't know from year to year what Dave Clawson's going to do. It could be a good year for Wake Forest. It could be a bad year for Wake Forest, and it may not even be his fault. But Wake Forest, I think it's quite possible because the ACC really isn't going anywhere unless it dissolves. I mean, Clemson's having a mass exodus too right now. Florida State might get DJ Uyunglele. Louisville has quarterbacks now. I mean, I don't really see that much of like a sea change. in a very
Mhm.
mediocre conference, other than them adding more teams. And none of the. I think it's possible just because I think the ACC has already. I don't want to say this too like negatively, but I think they've already been told like they're not the Power Five anymore. So
Right.
they may players mass exodus. They may end up being like a conference where you go to rehabilitate your image.
Fair enough. And as we approach 10 minutes to go, I'm going down the quarterback list of, who all is in the portal right now to make sure we have left out anybody. But, Riley Leonard, I'm pretty sure we've already talked about on the show. We pretty much know where he's going to go. I mean, he has the no contact clause and the crystal ball is to Notre Dame. So I think we all can assume
It's funny
Notre
for
Dame.
me.
What's up?
I will say this though, since it does hook off of Riley Leonard,
Okay.
it is now becoming intriguing to me to see. And it's been going on for a while because we've had Joe Burrow, we've had Jalen Hurts, we've had Caleb Williams, we've had moves like this. It's you usually think of like the transfer portal as something that a team like Indiana or Iowa or Louisville or Cincinnati, somebody who's good but isn't the god tier of college football, using it to get a little bit better. And now we're seeing teams who are on the god tier of college football. The Notre Dames, the Ohio States, the USCs, the Oklahomas, the LSUs. And I'm sure, even eventually, and this will probably be like when we realize that this thing is as important as we think it is, Alabama, they're starting now to use this to get proven commodities. It really is a lot like free agency, and it's intriguing to watch. You develop a quarterback for a few years at Washington State. He already transferred from Incarnate Word University. It's like it's almost like baseball now. You're making your way up from single A to triple A, and now you're ready for the big leagues. You're ready for that SEC or Big Ten starting gig, and it's intriguing to see because for the longest time, it's always been oh, you got to develop your guys, you'll get a star, recruit well, and now that's kind of gone out the window. It's more of I'm going to find the best quarterback for my team right now. And Kyle McCord, he's good. He's not great. I can go out and I can get great and be at the Heisman Trophy and be in the 12-team playoff. And I think that's a benefit of the 12-team playoff and the NIL thing is that the god tier of college football now is trying to jockey for position and getting more competitive when it comes to searching for like a quarterback.
And I want to touch on two things you said there, two different analogies. One, since you used the baseball reference, I think it's safe to say that Dylan Gabriel is like the Shohei Ohtani free agent move here with this quarterback class.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I can't imagine. Well, we'll have to wait for the Cam Ward. We'll have to wait for Cam Ward because I think he can command a little bit, if not a
I,
lot.
he wouldn't be maybe Cam Ward could be Juan Soto to Dylan Gabriel Shohei Ohtani.
That would be funny.
That would be a pretty good reference. But I also because you mentioned Alabama, I'd also want to note that Alabama does have a quarterback in the transfer portal,
Yes, but not the way you think.
but not in the way you think. Alabama made freaking Tyler Buckner, because y'all remember that reference I made on the show. We made Tyler Buckner switch sports. He's now in the lacrosse portal.
I think he's just going back to Notre Dame though to play lacrosse there. I'm not surprised they're not too big on lacrosse in Alabama. I think if they can't even get people to show up for their top 25 men's basketball team or whatever, then I'm not surprised they're not too big on lacrosse down there either. Not a slight at Alabama, but I mean it's true.
We take all the slights at Alabama. We
You
don't
do,
roll. We
but
don't roll. We
I
don't roll
refuse.
with. We don't roll with the tide.
That
Alabama
was
shouldn't have got in the college football playoff, but that's just me.
oh my god.
I got
Unless
Beans attention with that one
you
with
did get beat
Tyler
attention with
Buckner.
that one. And man, I can't wait. I really hope Jordan McLeod from James Madison comes with Kurt Signetti over to Bloomington because that would just make my best Big Ten quarterback year of all time even better. If Jordan
Yes,
McLeod
also it would be like the Matt McClellan special, the mid-major guy coming to his beloved Hoosiers, even though he considers himself a college football free agent.
I do. I mean, until proven otherwise, I mean, when has IU football really been relevant? I mean, you can tell me about 2020. I didn't believe. I thought it was a fluke, and I was right. It was because they had a really good quarterback, and then they ran him into the ground. That's
And a
the
really
Colts
good
fan.
offensive coordinator.
That's the Colts fan and me being very cynical about running your quarterback into the ground.
Ooh,
Yes, it is because I've seen that happen
it's
too many
true.
times. It's
We've
true.
seen
I've seen that happen too many
it's
times.
happened too many times. We've potentially ruined the tenure of two potential Hall of Fame and potential Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
But not Philip Rivers. Go
Well,
figure.
he was on his last leg as it is, so
Go figure. He's Philip Rivers. He was the best one. But yeah, I mean, we've talked all this time about quarterbacks, and we've only got about 3 minutes left, so we can't get into a lot of stuff. But another move, I think the biggest potential offensive move that's not a quarterback, Etienne, man, from Florida.
yeah,
He is going to make one offensive coordinator somewhere a very lucky, very happy, and at the end of next year's campaign, very much a richer man.
absolutely. Because I mean, even with that last name Etienne, we all know what his brother was able to do at Clemson, and he possesses a lot of the same capabilities. I've also heard a rumor floating around that if Travion Henderson decides to leave for the NFL draft, that Ohio State could swoop him up.
And that would just be not fair. Cam Ward and have Trevor Etienne on the same field next year.
Not to mention
Man,
all the receivers that they're going to have. And
it's just not
Ryan Day and Brian Hartline offense.
not fair. Not fair at all. I'm going to be honest with you.
But
And I
life's
mean,
not
then you've
fair,
got
man.
Rocket Raheem in the transfer portal too. There are some pretty good running backs in the transfer portal this year. I'm gonna be
There are
interested to
some
see
very.
where they.
We
I'll
might
be
have to
interested.
talk about the running backs next episode.
No, I think we'll probably just end up talking about all the weapons because there's a lot. There's a lot, and I mean,
Or, yeah, we'll
like
do
you
that.
said,
We'll next episode we'll do the skill positions.
Jeff Levy already has a huge pickup in Antoine Wells from South Carolina, so he's off to a good start.
And it looks like North Carolina has their Drake May replacement with Max Johnson.
That one's going to be an interesting one to watch pan out. But yeah, there are a lot of really good quarterback moves in the portal, and
We're
then
about
you've
to
got
find out how dysfunctional Texas A&M actually was.
considering that basically half their roster's gone now. It's gonna. I feel confident Mike Elko will coach up the guys he's got left, though. I really do.
I still
It's
stand by
just
my prediction that he'll win a title at A&M over the next 10 years.
it's just how soon into that 10 years does he get it? Are we talking year
Absolutely.
9? Or are we talking year 5?
Absolutely. It'll be determined. But we have less than a minute left before we have to get off of here. So as always, like and subscribe to Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channel. Follow our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That's at Less is More Sports. And until next time, Matt and I will be talking about the skill position players in the portal. So stay tuned for that. But we hope everyone enjoyed this episode, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I almost butchered that ending. That's terrible.
It happens.
It happens. I'm not a computer. I'm not a bot. I'm not
You know
AI
what's right?
generated.
Bean is a bot.
Don't talk about my dog. He's not Goddard. I know I look like Jimmy Neutron, but he's not Goddard, okay?
Emmy Neutron. You've called yourself Emmy Neutron.
I am Hemi Neutron.
Oh dear God.
I'm going to get off here before Matt thinks my ego gets way too big. So, bye.
Bye, Carl Weezer.